Imagine spending days preparing for a job interview, choosing the right clothes, practicing your answers, waking up early, feeling nervous but excited, and then ruining your chances in the first 5 minutes without even realizing it.
That is scary because a lot of people think interviews are only about qualifications.
Exactly. But sometimes the real problem is not your experience, your degree, or your English level.
It is the little mistakes.
Yes, the tiny mistakes that seem harmless but make you look nervous, unprepared, or less professional than you really are.
Like talking too much, interrupting the interviewer, or giving super short answers.
Exactly. Or saying negative things about your old job, or forgetting to ask questions at the end, or speaking so fast that nobody understands you.
I think most people have made at least one of those mistakes before.
Probably more than one.
Definitely more than one.
And that is what makes today's episode so important, because today we are talking about the job interview mistakes almost everyone makes at some point.
And the worst part is that many people do not even know they are making these mistakes.
Exactly. They leave the interview thinking, I think it went okay, and then they never hear back.
Ouch, that is painful.
It is. But by the end of this episode, you will know which mistakes to avoid, what to say instead, and how to sound more confident and professional in English interviews.
And if you have an interview coming soon, make sure you stay until the end because some of the biggest mistakes happen in the final few minutes of the interview.
That is very true. A lot of people do well at the beginning and then destroy the whole impression right at the end.
I feel like I already know one mistake.
Which one?
Saying, no, I did not have any questions.
Exactly. That is one of the biggest mistakes of all.
Oh no, I knew it.
But don't worry, we're going to fix that today.
And before we start, if you enjoy practical English lessons that help you in real life, subscribe to Talk Easy Daily because we make videos that help you speak English more naturally and confidently.
All right, let us begin with one of the most common mistakes people make in interviews.
Let me guess. Speaking too fast?
Exactly.
I knew it. Whenever I get nervous, I suddenly start speaking like an auctioneer.
And that happens to many people. They think speaking quickly makes them sound more fluent or more intelligent.
But actually, it usually makes them sound nervous.
Exactly. When you speak too fast, you often make grammar mistakes, forget words, mispronounce things, and confuse the interviewer.
And sometimes you speak so fast that you forget to breathe.
Very true. Listen to this example. My name is Emma. I worked in a sales company for 4 years and I like working with people and I really want this job.
That sounds stressful just listening to it.
Now compare it with this. My name is Emma. I worked in sales for 4 years and I enjoy working with customers. That is one reason I am excited about this opportunity.
That sounds much more professional.
Exactly. Slower speech sounds calmer and more confident.
I think people are afraid of pauses because they think silence looks awkward.
But actually, short pauses make you sound more thoughtful.
That is such a useful tip. So if you feel nervous, slow down and pause after each sentence.
Exactly. One small pause can completely change the way you sound.
What is another mistake people make?
Giving answers that are too short.
Like when the interviewer asks, why do you want this job? And you answer, because it seems interesting.
Exactly. That answer is too short. It does not tell the interviewer much about you.
So instead, you could say something like, I want this job because I enjoy working with customers, and I think this position would help me grow professionally.
Perfect. That answer is still simple, but it gives more detail and sounds much stronger.
I think many people are afraid of talking too much, so they give tiny answers.
That is true. But interviews are one of the few times in life when talking about yourself is actually important.
That is such a funny way to say it.
And here is the challenge. You do not want answers that are too short, but you also do not want answers that are too long.
Oh no, that sounds difficult.
It can be, and that is exactly what we are going to talk about next. Another common interview mistake is giving answers that are too long.
So first people answer with only one sentence, and then other people answer with their entire life story.
Exactly. Imagine the interviewer asks, what are your strengths? And 10 minutes later, you are still talking about a school project from when you were 16.
That sounds like something I would do when I get nervous.
A lot of people do it because they are trying to fill silence.
But then they forget the original question.
Exactly. Good interview answers are clear, direct, and focused.
So if the interviewer asks, what is one of your strengths, you do not need to list 20 things.
Right. You can say, one of my biggest strengths is communication. In my previous job, I often worked with customers and helped solve problems quickly.
That answer sounds much better because it's short, clear, and specific.
Exactly. A good answer usually lasts between 30 seconds and 1 minute.
That is actually a really useful rule because many people have no idea how long they should speak.
Another mistake people make is using very informal English.
Oh yes, like starting the interview with, "Hey, what's up?"
Exactly. Interviews are professional situations, so your English should sound polite and professional too.
So instead of saying, "Hey guys," you should say, "Good morning, thank you for meeting with me."
Perfect. That sounds much better.
And maybe avoid too much slang too.
Exactly. Words like awesome, cool, stuff, and you know are not always wrong, but if you use them too much, you may sound unprofessional.
I think a lot of people learn English from movies or social media, so they accidentally bring very casual English into interviews.
That is very true. And interviews are one place where your words matter a lot.
What about using weak language?
That is another major mistake. A lot of people say things like, I think I'm kind of good at teamwork, or maybe I could do that job.
That sounds very unsure.
Exactly. If you sound unsure, the interviewer may feel unsure too.
So instead of saying, "I am good at communication, especially when working with customers."
Exactly. That sounds much stronger and more confident.
I think people sometimes use weak words because they're afraid of sounding arrogant.
That is true. But confidence and arrogance are not the same thing.
That is such an important point.
Confidence means speaking clearly about your abilities. Arrogance means acting like you are better than everyone else.
So it is okay to sound confident in an interview because that is exactly what employers want to see.
Very true. Another mistake many people make is speaking negatively about their previous job, boss, or coworkers.
Oh wow, this one is dangerous.
Very dangerous. Even if your last job was terrible, the interview is not the place to complain about it.
Because if you say, "My old manager was awful and my coworkers were lazy," the interviewer may think you are difficult to work with.
Exactly. Instead, focus on positive reasons for leaving.
Like saying, "I learned a lot in my previous position, but I'm looking for new challenges."
Perfect. That sounds professional and mature.
I think people sometimes forget that interviewers are paying attention not only to what you say, but also how you say it.
Very true. And that leads us to another huge mistake.
What is it?
Not answering the actual question.
Wait, how does that happen?
It happens all the time. People get nervous, hear one word from the question, and then start talking about something completely different.
Like if the interviewer asks, "Why do you want to work here?" and you start talking about your hobbies.
Exactly. Or the interviewer asks about teamwork, and you suddenly start talking about your favorite subject in school.
That must be frustrating for the interviewer.
It is. So before answering, take a second to think about what the interviewer is really asking.
And if you do not understand the question, it is okay to ask them to repeat it.
Absolutely. You can say, "Could you please repeat the question?" or "Could you explain what you mean?"
That sounds much better than pretending you understand.
Exactly. Asking for clarification makes you sound careful and professional, not weak.
That is actually really reassuring because a lot of people are afraid to ask.
Another mistake people make is memorizing every answer word for word.
Really? I thought memorizing answers was a good thing.
Preparing is good. Memorizing every word is dangerous.
Because if you forget one sentence, you panic.
Exactly. And when you memorize too much, you often sound robotic.
Like you are reading from a script inside your head.
Very true. Interviews should sound natural, not like a school presentation.
So it is better to prepare ideas and examples instead of full sentences.
Exactly. Think about your answers like small stories. You know the important points, but you say them naturally.
That sounds much easier and more realistic.
And remember, interviewers do not expect perfect English.
That is such a relief.
They expect clear communication, confidence, and honesty.
So even if you make a small grammar mistake, that is usually not the end of the world.
Exactly. Most people lose interviews because of nervousness and poor communication, not because of one grammar mistake.
And if you're enjoying this episode so far, comment below and tell us which interview mistake you make most often. Is it speaking too fast, giving very short answers?
Or maybe talking too much, because the next mistake is something many people do without even realizing it. Another mistake people make without realizing it is using filler words too much.
Oh no, you mean words like like, and you know?
Exactly. Everyone uses them sometimes, especially when they're nervous.
But if every sentence sounds like, I was like, working in a company, it becomes distracting.
Very distracting. The interviewer stops listening to your message because they only hear the filler words.
I once recorded myself practicing interview answers, and I was shocked by how many times I said
That's actually one of the best ways to improve. Record yourself, listen carefully, and notice your habits.
because sometimes you don't realize what you sound like until you hear it.
Exactly. And here's a simple trick. When you need time to think, don't say
So what should you do instead?
Pause.
Just stay quiet for a second?
Yes, a short pause sounds much more confident than a lot of filler words.
That is such a useful tip because silence feels uncomfortable, but it actually sounds professional.
Very true. Another common mistake is forgetting to give examples.
So instead of saying, I am hardworking, you should explain why.
Exactly. Anyone can say they are hardworking, organized, or a good team player.
But those are just words.
Exactly. What makes your answer strong is the proof behind it.
So instead of saying, I'm good at solving problems, you could say, in my previous job, we had a problem with delayed orders, so I created a simple tracking system that helped us respond faster.
Perfect. That answer is much stronger because it shows a real situation and a real result.
It feels almost like storytelling.
That's exactly what good interviews are, small stories that show your skills.
I love that idea because stories are easier to remember.
They are. If you tell a short, clear story, the interviewer is much more likely to remember you later.
That is such an important point.
Another huge mistake people make is not preparing for common interview questions.
This sounds obvious, but so many people still don't prepare.
Exactly. They think they can just walk into the interview and answer everything naturally.
And then they hear a simple question like, tell me about yourself, and suddenly their mind goes blank.
That happens all the time. The most common interview questions are very predictable.
Questions like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why do you want this job? And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Exactly. You should always prepare for these questions before the interview.
But not memorize every word.
Right. Prepare your ideas, your examples, and the main points you want to say.
I think preparation gives you confidence because you already know what kind of answers you want to give.
Very true. Imagine two people going to the same interview. One person prepared examples and practiced common questions. The other person did nothing.
Even if both people have the same experience, the prepared person will probably sound much better.
Exactly, because interviews are not only about what you know, they're about how well you explain what you know.
Another question people often struggle with is the weakness question.
Ah, yes. What is your biggest weakness?
I think this is one of the most uncomfortable questions in any interview.
Because people don't know if they should be honest or strategic.
Some people give fake answers like, I work too hard or I care too much.
And those answers usually sound fake.
Very fake.
A better answer is to mention a real weakness that is not too dangerous for the job and then explain how you're improving it.
So instead of saying, I have no weaknesses, you could say, I used to feel nervous when speaking in front of groups, but I've been practicing by giving more presentations.
Perfect. That answer sounds honest, but it also shows growth.
So the important part is not only mentioning the weakness, it's showing that you're working on it.
Exactly. Employers do not expect perfection. They want people who are self-aware and willing to improve.
That is such a valuable lesson.
Another mistake people make is saying, I don't know, too quickly.
Oh wow, I have definitely done that before.
Many people panic when they hear a difficult question and immediately give up.
But sometimes they actually know something related to the question.
Exactly. Let's say the interviewer asks if you have used a certain software program before.
If you have not used it, you don't need to panic.
Right. Instead of saying, I don't know anything about it, you could say, I haven't used that program yet, but I've used similar software and I learn new systems quickly.
That sounds much more positive.
Exactly. Employers understand that you may not know everything already.
They mainly want to know if you are willing to learn.
Very true. And here's a good question for everyone watching. What do you usually say when you don't know an answer?
Most people probably panic.
Probably. But if you stay calm and focus on what you can do, you'll sound much stronger.
And I think the next mistake is one that people make right at the end of the interview.
Exactly, and sometimes it's the mistake that ruins everything. One of the biggest mistakes people make at the end of an interview is not asking any questions.
Yes, when the interviewer says, "Do you have any questions for us?" a lot of people just say, "No, I think everything is clear."
And that can be a huge mistake because it makes you sound uninterested.
Even if you are interested.
Exactly. Asking questions shows you are curious, prepared, and serious about the role.
So what kind of questions should people ask?
You could ask, what does a normal day in this role look like? Or what are the biggest challenges in this position?
Those are really good.
You could also ask, what do successful employees in this company usually do well? Or what do you enjoy most about working here?
That last one sounds really natural because it feels like a real conversation.
Exactly, and asking a good question can leave a strong final impression.
I think a lot of people forget that interviews are not only about answering questions.
Very true. Interviews are conversations. You're also deciding if the company is right for you.
That is such an important mindset because if you act like you're desperate for any job, you may seem less confident.
Exactly. You want to show interest, but you also want to show that you're thoughtful and selective.
Another mistake people make at the end is leaving with low energy.
That is a very common problem.
Because after 20 or 30 minutes, people feel tired, nervous, or relieved that the interview is almost over.
Exactly. And sometimes they stop smiling, stop making eye contact, and start sounding bored.
But the final few minutes are often the part people remember most.
Very true. So you want to finish strong.
Even if you are nervous.
Especially if you are nervous. You can end with something simple like, "Thank you for your time today. I enjoyed learning more about the role, and I'm very excited about the opportunity."
That sounds warm, professional, and confident.
Exactly. It leaves the conversation on a positive note.
Another mistake I think people make is forgetting to talk about their achievements.
That is a huge one. Many people are afraid of sounding arrogant, so they hide their accomplishments.
They say things like, "I was just doing my job."
Exactly. But interviews are the time to talk about what you have done well.
So if you increased sales, improved customer service, solved a problem, or managed a project, you should mention it.
Absolutely. And numbers are especially powerful.
Because numbers make your achievements feel real.
Exactly. Compare these two answers. I helped improve sales, or I helped increase sales by 15% in 6 months.
The second one sounds much more impressive.
Very true. Or instead of saying, I worked with customers, you could say, I handled more than 50 customer calls every day and maintained a high satisfaction rating.
That sounds much more professional.
Exactly. So before any interview, think about 3 achievements you are proud of.
That is such a good exercise.
Because if you do not talk about your achievements, the interviewer may never know how valuable you are.
Another mistake people make is not paying attention to body language.
Very true. You can say all the right words, but if your body language looks nervous or closed, it changes the impression.
Like crossing your arms, looking down, avoiding eye contact, or sitting with bad posture.
Exactly. These small things can make you seem uncomfortable or uninterested.
So what should people do instead?
Sit up straight, make natural eye contact, smile when appropriate, and keep your hands relaxed.
I think smiling is especially important because it makes you seem friendlier and more confident.
Very true. And remember, you do not need to stare at the interviewer every second.
That would be terrifying.
Exactly. Just make natural eye contact for a few seconds at a time.
Another mistake people make is interrupting the interviewer.
That happens more often than people realize.
Especially when people are nervous and want to prove themselves quickly.
Exactly. The interviewer starts asking a question and the candidate interrupts before the question is finished.
That can make you seem impatient.
Or like you're not listening.
So it's better to wait until the interviewer finishes speaking before you answer.
Exactly. Good communication is not only about speaking well, it's also about listening well.
That's such an important point.
Because if you're a good listener, you give better answers.
And you seem more respectful too.
Very true. Another common mistake is pretending to know something when you really don't.
Oh wow, that can be risky.
Very risky. Some people are so afraid of saying, I haven't done that before, that they pretend to have experience they don't actually have.
But if the interviewer asks more questions, the truth becomes obvious very quickly.
Exactly. It's much better to be honest.
So instead of pretending, you can say, I haven't worked with that system yet, but I'm excited to learn.
Perfect. Honesty with confidence is always better than pretending.
I think a lot of people believe they need to seem perfect in interviews.
But perfection is not realistic.
And sometimes trying to seem perfect actually makes you seem less trustworthy.
Very true. Employers usually prefer someone honest, positive, and willing to learn.
That's such a reassuring message because so many people put too much pressure on themselves.
Exactly. Interviews are important, but they're not about being perfect.
They're about showing the best version of yourself.
And that's why preparation matters so much.
Because when you prepare, you feel calmer, you speak more clearly, and you make fewer mistakes.
Exactly. And if you're finding this episode helpful, make sure you like the video and subscribe to Talk Easy Daily, because we have many more videos to help you speak English confidently in real-life situations.
And in the comments, tell us which interview mistake you think is the most common. Is it speaking too fast?
Talking too much?
Not asking questions?
Or saying, I don't know, too quickly?
Because in the next part, we're going to talk about some real interview examples and the small changes that can completely change the way you sound.
Let's imagine a real interview situation.
Okay, I think examples make everything much easier to understand.
Exactly. So imagine the interviewer asks, tell me about yourself.
That question always sounds easy, but it's actually one of the hardest.
Very true. Many people make the mistake of giving too much personal information.
Like saying, I was born in 1997, I have 2 brothers, I love pizza, and I enjoy watching movies.
Exactly. None of that really helps in a job interview.
So what should people say instead?
They should focus on 3 things: their experience, their current situation, and why they're interested in this job.
So a better answer could be something like, I've worked in customer service for 3 years and I enjoy helping people solve problems. In my current role, I work with customers every day, and now I'm looking for a new opportunity where I can continue to grow.
Perfect. That answer is professional, clear, and relevant.
It sounds much stronger because it focuses on the things the interviewer actually cares about.
Exactly. Now let's imagine another question. Why do you want to work here?
I think this is where people often make a big mistake.
Yes, a lot of people answer with something like, because I need a job.
Which may be true, but it's not a very impressive answer.
Exactly. The interviewer already knows you need a job. They want to know why you want this job.
So instead, you could say, I want to work here because I like the company's values, and I think this role matches my skills and experience.
Perfect. You can also mention something specific about the company.
Like, I read that your company focuses strongly on teamwork and customer service, and those are both things I value.
Exactly. That shows that you did some research.
And research makes you look more serious and prepared.
Very true. Now let's talk about one of the most difficult questions. Tell me about a challenge you faced at work.
Oh, wow. That question makes a lot of people panic.
It does, because many people either can't think of an example or they choose a story that is too dramatic.
Like talking about a huge disaster that makes them sound unprofessional.
Exactly. A better idea is to choose a simple challenge with a positive ending.
Can you give an example?
Of course. You could say, in my previous role, we had a problem with delayed customer orders. Customers were becoming frustrated, so I suggested creating a tracking spreadsheet to improve communication. After that, we were able to respond faster and reduce complaints.
That's such a good answer because it shows problem solving, communication, and initiative.
Exactly. It also shows that you stay calm under pressure.
I think that's something employers really want.
Very true. Now here's another common question. Why did you leave your previous job?
This is where people sometimes make the mistake of becoming too negative.
Exactly. They start complaining about their manager, their coworkers, or the company.
Even if those complaints are true, it still sounds bad in an interview.
Very true. A much better answer is something like, I learned a lot in my previous role, but I'm looking for new challenges and more opportunities to grow.
That sounds so much more professional.
Exactly. Or you can say, I enjoyed my previous position, but I wanted to find a role that was more closely connected to my long-term goals.
That sounds very mature.
Because it's focused on your future, not your frustration.
That's such a good point. Let's imagine another situation. The interviewer asks, "What is your biggest weakness?"
The scary question.
The very scary question.
I think most people either answer too honestly or not honestly enough.
Exactly. Imagine someone says, "My biggest weakness is that I'm always late. I don't like teamwork and I get bored easily."
That's definitely too honest.